This week marks a pivotal moment for Bitcoin, a real coming out party. The level of media attention is unprecedented, highlighting Bitcoin's growing recognition not just as an asset, but as a critical technology for America's success and global significance. Politicians and institutions are now acknowledging the immense power of the community behind it. This is an inflection point. Why? Because there's an important implication. Bitcoin is digital property. It stands for property rights, ethics, technical and economic soundness, and empowerment. The establishment finally agrees. While we in the crypto community understood this years ago, it wasn't clear that the mainstream or the establishment did. Back in 2020, the media barely covered the industry. Now, this week signals a wake-up call to both the media and global leaders. Bitcoin is here to stay, and it is the future.
This week represents a significant turning point for Bitcoin, a true coming out party. The sheer amount of media attention is remarkable, and it's a reflection of how Bitcoin is no longer just an emerging asset class, but a key technology for the future of America and the global economy. The political and institutional world is beginning to recognize the incredible power of the community behind Bitcoin, as well as the broader implications of its adoption. We are witnessing an inflection point. Why is this moment so crucial? Because it signals a shift in perception. Bitcoin is now being recognized as digital property. It's a symbol of property rights, economic empowerment, and ethical values. Technologically and economically sound, Bitcoin stands as an instrument of fairness and opportunity. The establishment is starting to see what the crypto community has known for years. 4 years ago, this was far from obvious. In 2020, mainstream media barely paid attention to the industry, and Bitcoin was still seen as a fringe movement. But this week, everything has changed. This is a wake-up call for the media, governments, and institutions around the world. Bitcoin is not just a passing trend, it's here to stay, and it's poised to shape the future of finance, governance, and innovation. The acknowledgement by the establishment is the validation of what we've been building, and it confirms that Bitcoin will play a defining role in the years ahead.
Subscribe our channel and press the bell button to get our video notification. And like the video.
The government's decision not to sell Bitcoin is a monumental step, elevating Bitcoin as property that is economically superior to other assets. First, it serves as an endorsement and acknowledgement that Bitcoin is indeed property. This means property rights are attached to it. Second, it's being recognized as better property than other traditional assets. Third, and perhaps most significant, is the idea of creating a national U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve. This is a huge shift in perception, moving Bitcoin from something viewed as toxic and disposable to something virtuous and worth holding on to. This is a profound moment. Donald Trump's recognition of the Bitcoin community further underscores this shift. He acknowledged that the Bitcoin community is filled with intelligent, ethical, hardworking, and creative individuals, at the same kind of people who made America great. Essentially, he implied that the pioneers who built this country would have been Bitcoiners. This acknowledgement is a game changer, as it ties Bitcoin to the very values that define American innovation and progress.
The government's decision not to sell Bitcoin is a pivotal moment, elevating Bitcoin as property that is economically superior to traditional assets. First, this decision acts as a strong endorsement, a formal acknowledgement that Bitcoin is indeed property. This is significant because it means Bitcoin is now recognized as something to which property rights are attached. Second, it signals that Bitcoin is being seen as better property than other assets, a more valuable form of ownership in the eyes of the establishment. Third, and perhaps most profoundly, is the idea of creating a U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve. This marks a major shift in perception, where Bitcoin is no longer viewed as something toxic to be offloaded, but rather as a virtuous asset the nation should hold on to. This shift is monumental. It reflects a deep change in how Bitcoin is perceived by government and society at large. No longer on the fringes, Bitcoin is moving toward becoming a strategic asset for the country. Donald Trump's recent recognition of the Bitcoin community further emphasizes this change. He acknowledged that the Bitcoin community is filled with intelligent, ethical, hardworking, and creative people, the same kind of individuals who made America great. Trump essentially implied that the pioneers who built this country would have been Bitcoiners. This acknowledgement not only validates the values of the Bitcoin community, but also ties Bitcoin to the core of American innovation and progress. The idea that Bitcoiners embody the spirit that helped shape the country is powerful and highlights how far the perception of Bitcoin has evolved. This is more than just a financial endorsement. It's a recognition of the role Bitcoin will play in the future of the nation.
Even though spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved, the acceptance came grudgingly from the SEC, which still refuses to allow options trading on top of these ETF shares. It's clear the approval was given out of necessity, not enthusiasm. This negative stance casts a shadow over mainstream investors. And we need to shift that perception from negative to at least neutral. Why should a federal regulator express a negative opinion on one asset versus another? And that mindset needs to evolve. There is also a significant issue with the tax treatment of Bitcoin ETFs. The lack of in-kind creation and redemption means any contribution or withdrawal of Bitcoin from an ETF is treated as a taxable event. For instance, if you invest in a Bitcoin ETF and it grows 10x, but then you want to move your Bitcoin to self-custody, you could face a 30% tax hit even though you haven't sold your Bitcoin. Similarly, if you want to move your Bitcoin from an ETF to a different custodian, it's taxed as if you sold it. This tax inefficiency is problematic and hostile toward Bitcoin investors. The system currently punishes people for wanting to manage their assets in a way that suits them best.
The approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs by the SEC came with reluctance. The SEC still refuses to allow options trading on these ETF shares, and it's clear that the acceptance was more of a necessity than a full endorsement. This negative stance continues to cast a shadow over mainstream investors, and it's crucial that this perception shifts from negative to at least neutral. A federal regulator shouldn't be expressing a negative opinion about one asset over another. This mindset needs to change for Bitcoin to be taken seriously as a legitimate financial asset. Another significant challenge with Bitcoin ETFs is the tax inefficiency due to the lack of in-kind creation and redemption. This means that contributing or withdrawing Bitcoin from an ETF is treated as a taxable event. For example, if you invest in a Bitcoin ETF and it increases tenfold, but you then decide to move your Bitcoin to self-custody, you could face a 30% tax hit, even though you haven't actually sold any Bitcoin. The same applies if you want to move your Bitcoin from an ETF to a different custodian. You are retaxed as if you sold it, even though you haven't. This creates a serious tax inefficiency that essentially penalizes Bitcoin investors for wanting to manage their assets in a way that best suits them. It's a hostile approach that discourages people from maximizing their holdings and taking control of their own Bitcoin. Until these regulatory and tax issues are addressed, Bitcoin ETFs won't reach their full potential for investors. For Bitcoin to become a more integrated part of the financial system, regulations must evolve to support a fairer and more efficient environment that encourages rather than penalizes investors.
Subscribe our channel and press the bell button to get our video notification. And like the video.